Alrighty, everyone, this is Meteorologist Timmy Albertson here with you guys for another update on Hurricane Idalia. During the overnight hours, Idalia intensified more to 130-mile-an-hour winds. That put her at the bottom of the Category 4 ranking. However, as of 7 a.m., so not on that track graphic you see here on the right, at 7 a.m., the National Hurricane Center put her winds back down to 125 miles an hour, making her a high-end Category 3 hurricane. Now, with that in mind, Idalia is beginning to make landfall. Her eye is beginning to make its way inland, and that is what we call in meteorology a landfall. So with that in mind, let's go ahead here and just take a quick look down at the satellite. You can see Idalia does not have much of a defined eye, at least on the satellite imagery. It is there, but it is very small. When these hurricanes kind of intensify quickly, they tend to kind of become a little bit more compact, and that's exactly what we're seeing with the winds and everything right now, well, pretty much with Idalia. So let's go ahead and flip over towards the radar here. On your left, you see the radar imagery. On your right, you see the velocity. And then the far right there, you do see that there are, some videos there. We actually do have a few storm spotters who are out there and are able to send back some video that we can see there. And all of this is right around the Perry area in Florida, close to the center of Idalia. So Idalia, as mentioned, is in the process of trying to make a landfall here. Now, I'm just checking one little quick thing here, and that is I want to see just one little thing here with the, yep, there we go. Okay, so Idalia, because Idalia is a rather compact hurricane here, what's going to be very interesting as we move our way forward is that even though some of these places are very close to the center of Idalia, because she's kind of compact, we're seeing kind of a very wide range of observations. So let's take a look here really quickly at the velocity imagery, and that's what this is right here. We use this in meteorology to look at winds of a thunderstorm as well as for rotation. It comes in handy during tornadoes, but it also comes in handy during hurricanes. So basically, green colors are winds going towards the radar site, which in this case is Tallahassee. Reds are winds going away from the radar site. So again, there's that counterclockwise flow of the hurricane, and basically some of the data points that we're able to see here indicate winds around 125 miles an hour. Now, mind you, we're looking a little higher up. We're not looking at the surface here. We're probably looking about 1,000 feet or so above ground level. And basically, what we see is that the radar is picking up on winds around 114, 127 miles an hour. So if we filter that down just a little bit, it does probably put us right around 120, 125 mile an hour winds. But as you can see, that's just generally kind of in a narrow portion. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and flip off the velocity and we'll just stick with the radar imagery here. The hurricane force winds of Idalia only extend about 25 miles out from the center, okay? So from where the center is right now, this is where the hurricane force winds can be found. It's about right there. Well, give it, whoa. Let's go ahead and try that one more time. It's about right. Hold on a second here. Whoa. Now we're having all sorts of problems. All right, let's go ahead here. The hurricane force winds are located about 25 miles out from the center. So this little circle here that you see is where the hurricane force winds pretty much are. Very compact. We're talking about 125 mile an hour max wind hurricane, and that is found generally right here in what is known as the eye wall. This is where those 125 mile an hour winds are going to be found, especially right here in this little section where it appears that the eye wall is a little bit more defined. So you can imagine the wind gradient here. Going from basically 125 miles an hour right here to only about 74 miles an hour right there. This is the eye. Things inside the eye are very, very calm. So when we say 25 miles out from the center, we are also including the eye, which is a few miles wide, but there is not really any winds inside the eye. It's a very quiet part of the storm. So with that in mind, you can see a very compact hurricane nonetheless. And when, as I mentioned, when these hurricanes do make landfall, they tend, or not landfall, excuse me, when these hurricanes do intensify rapidly, they tend to more or less become a bit more condensed. So right now, Idalia is making a landfall south of Perry, Florida. And what she's going to do, she's going to kind of continue this northwesterly direction. You can see it there on the forecast cone, kind of this northeasterly, excuse me, direction into southern Georgia. And then later on tonight, she'll be around Charleston, South Carolina, and will then reemerge back into the open waters of the Atlantic and then just kind of drift eastwards as a tropical storm, maybe getting close to Bermuda. But obviously, she will not be as strong as what she is now. At least that's what's expected. So right now, we're seeing Idalia kind of at her peak here. Now that she's hitting land, she is going to begin to weaken, but she is also kind of moving a little bit quickly here. So she'll probably um, when hurricanes make landfall, they tend to weaken. They do not like land. But because Idalia is moving kind of quickly, even though she's going to weaken at the rate that a hurricane would normally weaken, because she's moving quickly, the hurricane effects might extend a little farther than what we sometimes would expect. Sometimes with a system like this, a little bit further inland, and that again is just because of the speed that she's going to be moving. Right now to the north northeast, about 18 miles an hour, will probably increase a little bit as we go through the day. So let's flip back on over to the radar, and we can see there's the eye making landfall. Now there happened to be a little buoy. We'll take a look at this buoy here. We'll flip off the distance tracker. There was a buoy that looks like it received a direct hit, at least from Idalia. Now, the last observation was about 7 a.m. Eastern time, so about 45 minutes ago, and it was reporting 77-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Now, my guess is here is that was probably as soon as the Iowa might have passed it, and we'll come back and maybe see if we don't have maybe some other observations that, whether this one does it minute by minute or hourly. I'm a little uncertain about it at the moment, but regardless, still some very strong winds at that location. We had another buoy overnight that got pretty much close to a direct hit, and that was way down here. This is buoy 42036, but obviously it's now further away from the center, Idalia moving away from it, but winds still gusting up to about 40 miles an hour. According to this buoy's log here, it did receive wind gusts at one point at least. Let me go ahead and double check it here. This particular buoy overnight did appear to pick up some wind gusts that were right around, let's see here. We had a good 66 knot wind gust, so that would probably put it, let's see here. Just got to do the quick calculation. 76-mile-an-hour wind gust at one point at this buoy at around 4:20 a.m. Central Time. Again, it looked like the center of Idalia just missed it, but it still received kind of close to a direct hit as far as this system is concerned. There was also another higher wind gust that was reported around 2:40 a.m. Yeah, so there we go. That would have been as the center of Idalia was basically passing right by it, and it received about an 83-mile-an-hour wind gust. Now, again, remember that Idalia is a very compact hurricane, so any little fluctuation in its path could make a little bit of a difference depending upon where you are. So the eye of Idalia on this satellite, on this radar imagery, it now looks like it has moved over land, so it is officially landfalled. And take a look there. There is the eye wall there. So this is where those strongest winds are going to be. This is where your 125-mile-an-hour winds will be located. And when we flipped on the velocity radar imagery, that's what we were able to see. Was those 125-mile-an-hour winds just south of what appears to be the Perry area, probably right around, actually pretty much just right around the Perry area is where we're starting to see some of those very, very strong winds moving their way inland. Now, there is an extreme wind warning that is in effect. Those are typically issued with Category 3 or higher hurricanes when they begin to move inland, and that does include this area right here that we're looking at on the radar imagery. So certainly a very strong, very interesting hurricane in the sense that Idalia is the first hurricane in at least on record that has made landfall in Appalachia Bay as a Category 3 or at least higher hurricane. So, as much as Florida gets hurricanes, what's very interesting about Idalia is that Florida, we all know, gets hit with hurricanes. They've had so many hurricanes in their history. It's borderline comical. But um, they interestingly, the center, there's never been a landfall of a Category 3 or higher hurricane in Appalachia Bay, at least in recorded history. Even though that there have been hurricanes that have hit around there, and they have been grazed by some strong hurricanes. It's just kind of interesting that this one particular part of Florida, this little geographical area, that's we're only talking about kind of that little elbow there, uh, the Big Bend, I guess. There's never been at least a major hurricane make a landfall in that area in recorded history. Kind of interesting, nonetheless. So we are likely going to see some type of record set. But as I mentioned last night, Idalia itself, just the hurricane itself, not necessarily record breaking, but where it is and what the conditions that's going to bring with it to this area, there very well probably will be at least some type of records maybe set, just based on the fact that ironically, this one particular part of Florida has never seen a major hurricane make landfall. And again, we're not talking about a big area here. So again, when you roll the dice, sometimes it just depends upon where they fall based on atmospheric setup. But it is ironic that that setup has ironically never led to one in this particular, very particular area here. So with that in mind, will be interesting to see as we move our way forward through the remainder of the evening. So again, we have Hurricane Idalia right now, and she is kind of making her way inland now. Has just made a landfall. So as a high-end Category 3 hurricane, as mentioned earlier on, she was a Category 4 hurricane briefly with winds of 130 miles an hour. That's what you see down there on that graphic. That was about 5 a.m., but keep in mind that the recent update that came in had her at 125 miles an hour. So again, in meteorology, we categorize everything. So tropical depression is the lowest. It doesn't get a name. We normally number them. Idalia was tropical depression number 10 a few days ago. Then she became a tropical storm, at which point, when they become a tropical storm, they get their name. 39 to 73 mile an hour winds is the tropical storm. Once you hit 74 miles an hour, automatically a hurricane. All right, 74 miles an hour and above is a hurricane. That's what we mean by hurricane force winds. However, in meteorology, we also got to divide the category of the hurricane up, and we got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 5 is the strongest category of winds of 157 miles an hour or greater. Obviously, Idalia had a winds of 130 miles an hour a few hours ago, putting her as a low-end Category 4 hurricane. But now she's back down to 125 miles an hour, which puts her as a high-end Category 3 hurricane. So that's just the thing in meteorology we use. And again, this is the 1 minute sustained wind. So the whole thing does not have the 125 mile an hour winds, just kind of pretty much the small part right around the eye wall. That's where we see those strongest winds of a hurricane. Now, again, the tropical storm force winds do extend pretty far out, but the hurricane force winds only 25 miles out from the center. So we're only talking about a 50-mile swath of winds above 74 miles an hour. And within that tiny area is the 111 mile an hour winds, just right around the immediate eye wall. So again, the whole thing does not have that. So we'll keep an eye on Idalia as we move our way through the rest of your morning. Again, heavy winds, strong, high winds, heavy rain, and obviously some beach erosion there. We'll have another update coming up in just a little bit. So I thank you all very much for taking the time to join me here. We'll see you back here in just a little bit.